Hey, well, thanks for joining us for another episode of Triple Play today. Don't forget to
like and subscribe.
Yep. And don't forget to support those that support us, Resource One and his team, Andy McCollum, at 636-458-1798, along with CS Design, who designed our intro, outro, website, merch, all that good stuff at 573-436-3717. And today we're excited. We got a little bit different episode, different sport again.
That's
I
right.
love when we have different
Moving into different fields.
That's right, man. So today we have Merton, and should I call you by your stage name, Angelina Love, or?
Call me whatever. I got about 3 names.
Yeah. Well, so they're here today, and we're going to get to know them a little bit and find out a little bit more about NWA wrestling. So it should be a really cool episode. We appreciate you guys being here today.
Thank you for having us. Thanks for stopping by. Yeah.
Yeah.
It. You want to tell us how you guys ended up where you're at? What was there a thought growing up that this is what you guys wanted to do?
Well, I think my journey was a lot different than hers. I think we grew up the same way. I mean, I was obsessed with professional wrestling. I actually went to wrestling school when I was 16.
Wow.
My art teacher at the time, he was working a lot of indies during that time period, and he ended up, I believe, getting hired by TNA for a little bit. And I was in middle school. He was my art teacher. He ended up getting me into wrestling school when I was 16. He lied and told him I was 18. And then once they found out that I wasn't 18, they told me I couldn't come back.
Did you have any facial hair at that time or no?
No.
It wasn't believable at all.
I mean, this is like, man, I've had to work really hard to get this going, you know?
That's good.
But, he got me in. They told me I couldn't come back. And then I just kind of got off doing other things. And then once I kind of got into like supplements and doing bodybuilding and shows and all that kind of jazz, I'd always watched wrestling after I got older, and I would always kind of circle back to it. And then one day I just saw an advertisement when I was in the gym. It was like, do you want to be a pro wrestler? I was 33 at the time. I'm 36 now. And I called him up because me and him had always kept contact. And I was like, do you know anything about this? And he was like, well, I'll get you in there if you want to do it. So I just kind of wanted to do it like once a week, like just kind of like
try it out,
just another activity. And when I went to the guy who runs the school, I told him, I was like, I don't really want to get in here with like other guys. Like I'd rather just like you teach me like one-on-one. And he was like, I can't teach you one-on-one. He's like, you have to get in there with like other people.
Actually do it.
Like I have to watch you and then tell you what you're doing wrong. And I started doing that, and then before I knew it, it was just like.
Did you have Did you do this in high school? Did you guys like wrestle in high school?
I did some amateur wrestling in high school. Yeah.
On like high school teams and stuff.
Yep.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah.
So my story's way different.
Okay. Well, if you want to, we can pause it. If you want to start, let us know.
Your story. We got a little bit.
Yeah. Well, I'm from Toronto, Canada, and we didn't have like, especially for girls, like high school wrestling.
Yeah.
Football and baseball and cheerleading and stuff is much bigger of a thing in the States than in Canada. But I've been a fan ever since I was a very small girl. So I started when I was 18. I'm 41.
Okay.
So it's been more than half my life that I've been in the business. I started when I was 18, worked for WWE, worked most of my career, and how I would ever be known by anybody would be because of TNA, Impact Wrestling, Velvet Sky, and I did the Beautiful People. 7-time world champion.
I saw that. Yeah. You got a few accolades out there. You did really well. So
and then we just ended up meeting at NWA. I started working there in March of last year. And then he came in. So every year, the NWA anniversary, Wrestling at the Chase is a big NWA historical thing. So every year they do the anniversary show at the end of August at the Chase. So we did that last year, the 2 shows here. And then we went and filmed 3 TVs in Nashville. And then that's where he came was to those shows. But he tells a really good story of how we met.
Well,
go ahead. Yeah. Tell us.
So this was the first time they had brought me to TV. So I had been doing TV other places. I had done TV at like AEW and Ring of Honor. WWE had brought me down a bunch. And then when NWA brought me there, I just got to shout out Ricky Morton. Thank you to Ricky Morton for getting me the job there. you know, we were just, it's kind of like a formality in wrestling. Like, you have to say hi to everybody in the locker room. That's like a big thing. If you don't, or if you just kind of like walk around like you own the place.
It's an etiquette thing.
Yeah, it's a big thing. Like,
Is that something you learn right away, or is that something you learn?
if you have
the
a good
hard way?
trainer,
Okay.
they'll tell you, like,
Yeah.
when you go in the locker room, like, you need to speak to everybody and make sure you say
That's
hi.
interesting. I wonder why. I mean, that's not like that in other sports.
Well, I think it's just a respect thing. It's a very kind of like old school thing. It's not as existent these days anymore.
Like a gladiator kind of respect. Hey, we're
Yeah, I mean,
everybody
just like,
involved. We know what's going on.
Well, you can be looked at like, I mean, you should just anyway say hi to people. Like, that's just a general thing. You're walking into a locker room, you probably just should say hi to people.
Right.
But you know, if you don't, then maybe people who are a little more of an old school mentality will look at that and be like, "Oh, this is a kid like too good to say hi to me." Like,
Makes
so
sense.
yeah, and that happens all the time.
Right.
I mean, you'll see some people, like, you have like the active roster that works for the company, and then sometimes they bring people in, like, you know, they might have me in a match with a guy, and he's not a hired talent, but they might be using him to get me over on television or whatever the case is. And you know, if you bring a guy like that in, and he just doesn't say hi to anybody, or he's just walking around, you know, with his head in the air, a lot of people look at that and they go like,
Right.
who's this guy think he is?
Right.
You know? I mean, he didn't even work here. You know, he's walking around like he owns the place. You know?
Yep.
So, but we met. I think I had just met with Billy Corgan at the time. Me and him and Ricky Morton were talking about some things out by the ring, and then I walked back, and she was walking out of a room, and I just looked at her, and I was just like, "That's mine." And I just beelined straight to her, and I just was like, "Hi," I was like, "My name's Merton." He was like, "My name's Lauren," and then we just
Hit it off?
never
And
stopped talking from that point.
I knew of him
Yeah.
because I've known EC3. So he was doing EC3's Control Your Narrative stuff. And I've known EC3 probably since 2014. So I had seen, and I was following his CYN stuff. So I had seen him. So I would have known him to see him. But that was like the first time we...
That was kind of how you got your name out there a little bit too through there, right?
Do the Control Your Narrative stuff.
Yeah. I was noticing that as I was researching a little bit that.
Well, that kind of happened through when EC3 got let go from WWE. They did this. I guess it was kind of like the first kind of thing that had ever been done like that, which was like they were filming, like, it was almost like a cinematic wrestling kind of piece of art. I mean, that's really the only way I could.
It was movie-esque.
Yeah, it was kind of shot like a movie, but like the stuff in the ring was done like you would be doing, like having a normal match, like in front of a crowd. So we would kind of like walk through it, and then he just hit me up one day. Like I knew him before I ever got into wrestling, just through like supplements and bodybuilding and all that kind of stuff. And he hit me up. He just replied to one of my stories on Instagram, and he was like, "I got this thing if you want to do it." This was on like a Wednesday, and I was like, "Well, when do you need me to come down to do it?" He was like Saturday. So I was just like, "Okay, man." You know, he was like, "I don't know what'll come of this." He was like, "But if nothing comes from it, it'll just be like a cool piece of art, you know." So when we got down there, we started doing it, and there were lots of people, and we were filming that for Impact, because Impact ended up using it when he went back over there. And it was just kind of me getting a little something in on him, but mainly me making him look good in terms of just taking the moves and the bumps and all that kind of jazz. And then from there, it just kind of took off after that.
Awesome. That's awesome. Wow. So you mentioned Billy Corgan. You obviously have met him, right?
Oh,
so
yeah.
is he cool? I mean, that's NWA is kind of known by him, right? So that's his big.
I've probably known Billy for about 12 years.
Wow.
He used me when I was in Impact. It's probably like 2010, actually. He used to run an indie in Chicago, because that's where he's from. He still lives there. And we were doing a house show loop that weekend, so like non-televised travel shows. And I think we did like TNA show on Friday, and then he had worked out with TNA for me to do his indie on Saturday, and then I had to go meet up with everybody else to go do the show wherever it was on the Sunday. And like I've always been a Pumpkins fan. Like we all grew up like
We didn't, exactly.
Yeah, like so everybody's like knows Billy and yeah, and then we'd always kept in touch. Like when I did Ring of Honor in 2004, but then I kind of came back and did more with them in 2019. And we did the G1 Supercard at Madison Square Garden. And he was backstage at that, so I got to like see him again there. I would just kind of see him randomly here and there over the years. And then when Ring of Honor got sold at the end of 2022, like a ton of people. Billy had already like really reprised the NWA, and like a lot of people that I know, including Velvet, my tag team partner, was working there. So I just kind of hit them up and was like, hey, like Ring of Honor went out of business. I'm not under contract anymore. So like I'm available if you want me. So they already, that was like the very end of October. No, it was 2021. It was 2021. And then
years, 2020 and 2021. I don't remember anything.
Anything between 2020 and 2022 is all the same to me. But yeah, so it was the end of October 2021. Ring of Honor just kind of finished up. We did our last show in December, which he was at. So we both worked. It was Final Battle, December 2021. Never saw each other. Never said hi. Nothing. Yeah. So we were under the same roof. Never saw each other.
Well, they had us walled off though. So like me and
because they were a surprise.
Yeah, Braun Strowman and EC3 and Weston Blake. We were kind of doing like a big run-in thing at the pay-per-view, and they didn't tell anybody that we were coming to do it. Like the only people that knew was like the owners and like the upper management people and us. And like because like when we got there, like they had us in a hotel and they were telling us like don't even come out of your room, because if you come out of your room and somebody sees you, they're going to leak it to the internet and tell her. And that's a big thing too, is like dirt sheets and leaking all this stuff to the internet. So when we got there, like we literally like walked in and like they had us wear like these big hoodies and they were like just go straight upstairs. We walked in, got right on an elevator, and they had us in like a walled off room that was like where they had like black curtains up and everything. And then we did our deal, and as soon as we did our deal,
well, and I watched it too, because I think I was like the first or second match of the pay-per-view. So when I was done, Mandy Leon, who we were in a group called the Allure in Ring of Honor, she did a lot of like the social media posts and stuff like that. So whenever she wasn't like actively wrestling or needing to be preparing, she would be like up top and doing GIFs and doing little videos and posting them live for the fans to keep up with like the show and stuff. And so I just went up there with her, like her mom was there. So we were just like way up top. And I remember watching like their segment, and I was like, oh, there's Brad and like the CYN guys, but it never saw him backstage, nothing. And then WrestleCon is a huge signing that basically is wherever WWE does WrestleMania every year. So it was in Dallas in 2022. And we literally, and it's in a huge room. There's a million tables and everything's curtained off here, here, and here, and here. And everybody just goes and gets autographs from whoever. And me and Velvet were like at the end of one row, and him and the CYN guys were on the opposite side, but at the end of the other row. So we were literally like 6 tables. Never saw him. The 3 days we were there, never saw him. And it wasn't until NWA where it was like, no, hello.
That's hilarious. Yeah.
Do you guys there's different formats of wrestling, right? Do you guys have a favorite style event format? You guys tag team?
So I mean,
cage, like.
Well, I've done everything. Singles. Yeah. I've done singles and tag team. So I was singles for all of the beginning of my career, really. But then when TNA started the Knockouts division in 07, they brought in like 11 or 12 new girls to just like be like, here. So we were all kind of getting introduced at the same time. And every girl was like their own singular character, and everybody had a different look, different style. It was really cool. But like me and Velvet, we knew each other prior to, because I was in WWE and she had a tryout and she was down for a week and all that kind of stuff. So like we knew each other. But we were just like, we both wore like really sexy outfits, and we did the hair and the makeup and spray glitter and like all the things. So we just had similarities, and we were like, oh, like we should try to do something like as a group or like a team, because like nobody else is doing that, and like that could be our thing. So then that's just kind of like how the Beautiful People started. Vince Russo was the writer at the time, and we were really close with him, and he's really good at listening to ideas and working with you. A lot of people say different, but my experience with him was really good, and that's just how we started the Beautiful People, and that's kind of how we became anything really.
That's awesome.
Is doing that. But then, because we were talking about Billy, when we got together, we very quickly decided to like do something together in wrestling. And so we did like just a couple indies and just filmed some stuff, made a little 1-minute video. And I texted it to Billy, and Billy, and I mean, he was having me manage him at the next tapings. He loved it.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
A little elevator pitch.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, and I mean with me and her, you can do a lot of things. So I prefer wrestling singles matches,
Okay.
because everything falls on you. So if we're in the ring and something goes awry, I mean it can go awry with the other guy, but if it's just one guy, you can quickly get it back on track. Whereas like if it's a tag team match, you know, I've had experiences where like I worked in a tag team, like on the indies for a little while, and it would be fine until I got out of the ring. And then when I was on the apron, the matches would just go awry. And it's like I couldn't control 3 other people, but I can control 2 guys. You know, so if one guy's lost, I can grab a hold and say, "Are you lost? Do you know where we're at?" You know? And then with me and her, it's a good dynamic because like, we complement each other in terms of like how we look, and then there's so many things that you can do with us. So like we can do mixed tag team matches with me and her on a team against another guy and a girl. She manages me, you know, lots of like interference stuff, and just kind of like us working together. So it works really well for like TV and what we do.
What's the hardest area of when you guys are actually going at it to control? Like, maybe this is a dumb question. Off the ring, like towards the fans, on top of the ropes, or like actually in the ring? Like when you're doing moves, when you're going back, like what's the hardest? What's the most uncomfortable place to be when you're?
I wouldn't. Nothing's really
Maybe it's
uncomfortable, but I mean, if you're talking about like where could it be difficult, I would say in the ring, because like sometimes when you're in the ring with somebody, their ears shut off.
Okay.
And they just get like stage fright, or like if they're newer and they're not like very relaxed in the ring, they're real tense, or they just forget things, but because they're so nervous and they're just in their own head and they can't hear you and try and talk. So sometimes people can just, you literally just have to grab them and like throw them down and just hold them there and be like, calm down. Listen to me. Don't move. Like just sit in this hold and like take a breath. I'll get you back on track. So stuff like that, like, cause you are, like Merton was saying, like trying to work with other people. And sometimes people go in business for themselves. Sometimes people just shut down, or like, you know, if sometimes you can have a 15-minute match planned out. And then right before you go out the curtain, they were like, so-and-so went long. Y'all got 8. So then you're like, and then the music's hitting, and you got to figure out how to take half the match out, like on the fly. There's a lot of things with live performing, that is very difficult. So like, so it kind of doesn't make a difference, like whether you're on the apron or on the mat or on the top turn. But you know, I mean, like I don't do a lot off the top. I do some, but like I got a torn meniscus in this knee and a surgically repaired ACL in my left knee, you know, and so I have the vertical leap of Yokozuna also. So I don't like, I'm a more ground and pound type person than like flippy floppy high flyer. That's not my thing.
But you know, I think, you know, mentally too, you have to be able to process a lot of things at one time. So if you're just working a live event where there's no cameras, that's one thing, because you don't have to focus on what you need to be doing to the cameras. But like, you know, wrestling is a big production. So when you go to TV, you know, it's you and whoever you're working, and you guys are figuring out the match, and there's an agent on the match, and he's having his say. He's saying like, this is what management wants from the match. This is what the finish is going to be. And then once you get in there, we have, you know, if this was the ring, there would be a stationary camera right here in the crowd. So that camera never moves. So that's what you want to do, everything to that camera. If you're doing something like in the corner or on the ropes or whatever, the guys who are the cameramen that are on the floor will come to you. So, you know, if you lock up with a guy in the ring and you take a headlock on him and your back is to this camera, you have to remember, like, I need to turn this guy around to face the camera. You know, so that the camera can see his face, because wrestling is all about facials. And then just like I talk a lot when I'm in the ring. I talk all the time. So like as people, I think when you're moving in motion, it's very hard to tell when you're talking, but it's just one of those things. Like if a guy shoots me off and I shoot him and he's coming right here, you know, I'm going duck to whatever. And the better you get at doing it and the better people I think that you work, the less, like some people would think if you shot a guy off the ropes and you wanted him to duck two things and then give you a crossbody, that's like 2 sentences, you know, that you'd have to tell. But I can just tell him like duck 2 crossbody. And he knows when he's coming off the ropes, it doesn't matter what I'm throwing, just duck. So it's a lot to process.
Yeah. Well, I just listening. Thank you for sharing all that, because my appreciation for wrestling had literally jumped. I don't know how much, but
it's a very difficult sport. I mean,
Seriously,
they take a beating. That's one thing I always watch. I always think, man, if I were me and I'm flying off the ropes and taking, you know, all these holds, because I wrestled in high school a little bit, but I didn't.
Well, I didn't. I grew up
like that.
I grew up a wrestling family. Who doesn't grow up a wrestling fan? Or at least maybe in the 80s, in the early 90s. But when I was watching, I think, there's my guy. Those are his moves. I'm hoping for his move. But I didn't think about you guys thinking about where the cameras are, next moves, like things go wrong, having to adjust.
Well,
like, live
it's just
performance was a great way of describing
it's
it.
a huge production. Wrestling's a huge production because, like he was saying, we have agents.
Yeah.
So, like, basically, management and the writers and creative know what they want. And then there'll be, like, an agents meeting during the day. And they'll be like, Sam, you have this match and this match and this match. And here's the points. And this is what we want out of these matches. And then they got to come tell us, the performers. And then we got to figure out and we got to hit these points that they want to see. And then they got to go back and tell them. And then we'll be like, they'll come to us like before the show starts or before the match and be like, okay, like what are your big things, so that they know where to tell the floor cam guys to be. And then there's somebody sitting in gorilla and there's 4 or 6 or 8, you know, camera shots back there, and they've got headsets on like we do, and they're talking to the production truck saying like, camera 4, get this shot, camera 2, now go to camera 1, back to this, and they do that all the time for the whole show. And then the agent will be like, well, what do you have? And be like, well, at this point in the match, I'm going to do this big thing out of the corner. So we got to have the floor guy there. And then they'll just jump back and forth between whatever the floor shot is to the hard cam and this and the that. So we got to tell them like what the things are that we like really want to make sure they get on camera properly. But like he was saying, it's like you always play to the people at home, because the people at the live show, you can see that from all angles anyway, it doesn't matter. At home, it's different. So the hard cam, you know, Vince McMahon's thing was always like this, like your face. I need to see your face. I need to see what you're doing. So major production.
Yeah.
And then you have to think about time as well, because when you're wrestling on pay-per-view or live TV, whatever, they've given you a time limit on the match. So if the time limit is 10 minutes, you know, likely they want you to get there and get it done in about 9 minutes and 45 seconds. So you have the referee who has got an earpiece in his ear, and the production people are giving him time cues. So sometimes when he walks up, I might be doing something in the corner, and maybe he says, you know, get off of him. And I turn around and he goes, hey, we're 4 minutes in. And then I'm going back to doing what we're doing because I need to know where we're at as far as time goes. So I can.
So we have to be able to compute that in our head.
Yeah.
So that's why I like to do less and have more time to draw it out than have 800 moves and spots planned. And then when I thought I had, you know, 6 minutes left, I only have 3. And then I'm like in my head trying to go like, oh, how do I cut all this stuff out and tell them? But so I would rather just like, I like to draw things out and be real charactery and kind of like slow with my stuff. Cause then I'm like, okay, well, if we need to go, then we can go when I got time. I don't like to be stressed out about what I do.
No.
Well, it's like, it's athletics, but you also have to be doing interviews. You have to know clock, speed, like everything in sports, all the extra, but also at one time. It's crazy to think.
It's never what people think, because everybody thinks like, nah, wrestling's fake, I can do it. Everybody's like, bah, get in there and whip your, and it's like, okay, try to take a bump. And usually when people, because it's not natural, like throw yourself down on your back, just you know, on a hard surface, because rings are not hard. And you know, usually when we like invite people into the ring to try it, it's like, nah. People can't even step in the ring. They don't even know how to get through the ropes.
I felt the ground. Yeah, I hats off to you guys.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's a sport. I mean, you got to have the physical part, you got to be able to be an actor. I mean, you're basically got the physical part, you got the acting part. I mean, that's a lot going on. I mean, that's most people play one sport and they don't have to think about, they're just focused on making the outcome happen that they want to see, not trying to be orchestrated by. Which reminds me, do you get to pick if you're a villain or a hero in that, or does that kind of,
Depends on where you work, I think.
Okay.
If you work for, like, WWE is a very controlled environment. So, they have a lot of, like, if WWE was to hire me right now, like, they're not going to let me be the psycho boy. They're going to change my whole gimmick. They're going to want me to do something totally different. And they do that because they want to own the rights to the gimmick. So a lot of guys that you see when they leave places like WWE, they can't be that character anymore because WWE owns the rights to the character.
Mm.
So they're very hung up on that kind of stuff over there. Whereas, like, if you're working at, like, NWA or, like, New Japan or AEW, most of the time, like, they don't own the rights to the characters or anything like that. So,
But when Creative came down to see us one day, he did head to toe in, like, Russian soldier garb and just stood in the middle of the ring and just yelled out the Russian national anthem, and they were like, oh, and he was like, he was brought to TV like the next week, and we're like, he sucks, but it doesn't matter because they didn't have that.
Right.
yeah.
And when we started the Knockouts division, like, we had Awesome Kong, who's like 6 foot, like 200 pounds. So she was the big, and then, Gail Kim is like from Toronto. I trained with her, the Asian, super fast, athletic. And then, like, Miss Jackie was just like the ass kicker. And then, like, Shelly Martinez, I can't remember what her name was, but she was like the sexy Latina. You know what I mean? Like, we each had like a different thing, which at the time in like 08-ish, everybody in WWE was like a lot of diva search girls, lots of models. The matches were the bathroom break matches, kind of, sort of. And like all the girls in the Knockouts division, like, we all had wrestling backgrounds. We'd all been wrestling for years, and we were having serious matches, co-main eventing with like Kurt Angle and Jeff Jarrett. Like, so we were really getting up ahead of, like, pushing the women forward at that time. That's when it started escalating.
That's good.
Yeah.
So, like, they'll have like when we're doing TV, a lot of times, like, they will have matches, or like tryout matches, things like that, because they're like testing out the equipment, like, for the commentary guys and the cameras, and like making sure everything is good when we go live for TV. But they need matches to happen and to commentate and all that to make sure everything is good to go. And we sit and we watch them. A lot of the roster, like the active roster, will sit out and like watch the matches. And sometimes you see guys and you go like, oh man, like, I know exactly what that guy does. Like, I know exactly what his character is. And then, like, there's a lot of guys that just come in and you're just like, brother 454 in tights, just doing moves, and you just go like, what's
I'm
this
here
guy
for
doing?
wrestling, brother.
That's hilarious. So so did they ask for your input since you guys watch when you were doing that?
You'll have some people that ask for feedback and stuff like that, and there's a lot of people that think they know it all already and already got it all figured out, and they don't want your feedback. So I never offer feedback unless I'm asked.
What about when they're like looking to bring in somebody like NWA? Do they ask you guys what you think about this person, or do they care that you guys give
Sometimes,
an
like,
endorsement?
I mean, if it's a friend of mine that got contacted by them, then, like, they might, or if I want to suggest somebody, but like, if they just decide they're going to bring like Daisy Killen or like somebody new, like, we're not going to know about that. That's like their thing with talent relations, and they'll just reach out to whoever, or maybe they've been getting emails from these people and they decided like, yeah, like, we're going to be filming at this place next month. If you want to come by, we'll give you like a dark match and look at you or whatever.
Gotcha.
A lot of wrestling is, because there's no. I mean, you have to learn how to wrestle, right? But like, there's no like college you can go to like learn how to do this stuff, right? It's just like everything. It's just like an art,
You learn as you go.
Yeah, and it's kind of it's like a hand-me-down thing, like, because you're always being handed new stuff down. But when they bring people in, I mean, wrestling is definitely a recommendation business. So, like, there were a lot of people at NWA that recommended me to come in, like Ricky Morton, I mean, who's an absolute legend. He wanted me there. His son wanted me there. EC3, had recommended me, and then there was a guy, Johnny Swinger, who's been wrestling forever. He's actually an agent there, and I worked him on an indie, and we had a really good match. And they asked him about me. They said, like, what's up with this guy? Like, everybody keeps saying we need to bring him in. So once I got in there, Pat Kenny, who is like the head of talent relations, he just came to me like that Monday when we first met. I just did like a little promo segment, but that Tuesday they had me do a match, and I remember he just like walked by me in the hallway. He was like, "We heard a lot." He was like, "It's your time to either, do it or don't do it." And he was like, "You got a match today," and like that was it, And we did the match, and we came back, and he was like, "The match was great," and then they moved me up. That was a match on USA. That was actually it was actually a dark match that they used. They actually used the match on TV. Afterwards. And then the next day they moved me up to the main show, like right off the bat. They were like, "You're going to work one of our main guys," which was like Odinson at the time. They were pushing him really heavy. And then after that, it was just, we were doing our thing and have been ever since.
Did it seem fast, or did you just knew like going in, like it sounds like in wrestling, you either kind of get going based on recommendations, or like, he's good. Okay, he's good. Did it happen? Did it seem like it happened fast?
So, like, is this like, are you asking fast in terms of like just my entire progression in wrestling, or just at NWA?
Yeah, like making the call to like being on TV. I mean, I know it took years, but like,
yeah, probably. I mean, even now I've been working matches for what, 2.5 years, maybe.
Yeah.
So 2.5 years. I mean, but that's from like the very first time that I ever like went to the school and took a bump.
Correct. Right. So is that a normal progression, or is that fast?
No, that his is fast.
Yeah.
Yeah, because some people won't even get a tryout anywhere until they've been doing it for the indies for 10 years. Right. Everybody's story is different.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I kind of look at it as the minors. You got some people that stay in the minors forever. You got others that rise really quickly, and you definitely sound like somebody who you already had a lot of the things together. You just needed the opportunity.
And I think now we're in a space too where the way I look, I would. So like, there's a lot of guys that like talk about paying dues, and some guys want you to pay your dues on the indies. Like, man, this guy didn't really pay his dues. He hadn't been working the indies forever. But like, everybody pays their dues different ways. Mm-hmm. When I was dieting and training for the last 10 years to build my physique nonstop, never taking any breaks, and competing and doing shows, like I was paying my dues in the gym. And wrestling is a very like, what do you look like business.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's how do you look on television? So I mean, for me, the way the indies are now, I think I just stood out from everybody else because I had like a bodybuilder body, but I could move good too in the ring.
And all the prison tattoos.
The prison tattoo. We both got a lot of tattoos, but I mean, it seems like it's something you guys share in common, right? So
tattoos, yeah,
your enjoyment of them, your fine pleasure.
You were more polished going in than the average person.
A lot of guys. Yeah. So if you walk in Walmart right now and just walk wherever, you'll probably see like a lot of regular looking dudes. That's mostly who shows up to wrestling school. And it's like, you have to think about like, what are the guys? Tom Pritchard, who's an agent at NWA, when I first started wrestling, he had a seminar, and he laid something out at the seminar, and he used me as an example, right? He goes, there was a guy there who asked for some feedback, and like, he wasn't in great shape or anything. And he was like, well, what do you want? Like, feedback, like on the entire day, or do you want feedback on yourself? And he goes, well, I came to your seminar, during this time or whatever. And he was like, what advice did I give you the last time you saw me? And he goes, like, about wrestling? He goes, no, like about other things. And he goes, well, like, you said that I needed to like get in better shape. And he was like, COVID and like all these different things. And he goes, look, my brother's Bruce Pritchard is Vince McMahon's right-hand man. He goes, and he pulls me out of the crowd. He goes, I got you. He goes, and I got this guy, and I got 2 pictures. He goes, and I'm going to give them to my brother. He said, how many matches have you had? He goes, oh, like I've had like 150 matches in my career. And he goes, how many matches have you had? I said, like 3. And he goes, I can tell you right now who's going to get picked. He said, this guy. He said, because he looks like a wrestler.
Right. Yeah.
So, I mean, it's a very looks-based business.
Absolutely.
For sure.
Yeah, yeah. I imagine that's kind of how they determine how they bring you in too, is because if they're looking for a certain look. I mean, you talk about heels and all that. Maybe that does that play? I would imagine into
Sure, and
how they look.
it's just a
So,
lot of like, there's a lot of guys that are like, they got 7 moves. That's all they know how to do, and they get over, and they get brought in, and people go like, "Man, I'm so much of a better worker than this guy. I'm way better." But like, it's entertainment.
Right.
right.
It's not who's the best wrestler. I mean, it's
Well, it's very opinion based too,
Mhm.
as far as like who's making the calls. It's like whatever floats your boat. Doesn't
Yeah.
float everybody else's boat. You might not understand it, but that's what they want. So
Yeah.
Mhm.
So, do the fans recognize you out and about when you're not in your character, and do they ask you to be in your character when they see you out and about?
no,
So-
no, people.
not they wouldn't ask me to be like in character and stuff like that.
They wouldn't
but,
be like,
there's
"Come on,
times-
Psycho Boy."
Well, there's like times where we we'll like we were in Tampa, we were doing a pay-per-view, and it was like, we got back to the hotel, we put our stuff up, we went out and ate dinner, and we came back, it was like 1 o'clock in the morning, and we're like, like 10 fans like in the lobby like waiting, and had all kinds of stuff they want you to sign, and it's just like, I mean, you play pro sports, I mean, so you know how it is,
Yeah.
right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And you're just like, man, it's like 1 o'clock in the morning,
Yep.
dude. Like, what are you doing here?
Yeah.
I'll tell this story really quick before we wrap up.
Yeah, yeah.
We did, so I went to Durham College in Canada. It's in Oshawa, just north of Toronto. And in '08, TNA did a pay-per-view there. And I was on it. So me and Kevin Nash went up like 3 days early to do like a bunch of promo stuff in Toronto. And I think when Fight TV, before it became TV, it was just like a radio thing. They had me in to do an interview. And Velvet and I were doing The Beautiful People at the time, big heeled bitches, whatever. And the guy that I was talking to, like halfway through the interview, he was like, "Can I just say something?" And he's like, "And please do not take this the wrong way." He's like, "But I did not expect you to be nice." And I kind of laughed, and he was like, "I'm sorry." He's like, "I'm not trying to be rude, but," and I'm like, "No, it's fine." I'm like, that's just means I'm good at my job. You believe that I'm, like that on TV, and I'm not. I'm like, if I did, I have no friends. But like, I remember, I'll never forget that because he was so like, thought he was insulting me, but I was like, no. I'm like, that's good. It's a good thing.
I love it.
Yeah.
That's cool. So before we go though, you also have a supplement company. So why don't you probably get in a little bit?
Yeah, we got a bunch of different ones. Black Magic Supply is at blackmagic.supply. Chemex Lifestyle on Instagram at Chemex Lifestyle, at MyoBlocks, at Gen 1 Nutrition. So there's tons of stuff, and tons of supplements for everybody, depending on where you're at on your gym journey, we'll call it that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well,
It's only gonna help.
Yeah, it's only gonna help.
It's only gonna help.
that's
Yeah, we're
right.
not selling snake oil.
That's
We
right.
got you covered.
Well, what I was going to say is make sure you send me the links, and I'll make sure we put them in our show notes. And that way, if anybody wants to check them out, you guys can, go easily just look in the show notes below the episode and check it out and buy some supplements, support those.
Get you guys a discount code thing to put in there for the show or whatever.
Yeah.
It'll be a show discount code for anybody.
Yeah,
Sure,
eventually we got to have a triple play supplement and work with you guys on that,
We can do
right?
it, yeah,
So,
most definitely.
and do some more partnership because I'm excited about you guys. It's really cool. And, as
Thank
your
you for
journey
having us.
Oh, it's our
Thanks
pleasure.
for coming.
Oh, and we got a new business that her and I are working on. So she knows how to do grass-fed tallow lotions, chapstick, all of that type of deal. So
Wow.
it's going to be called Essentials by Lauren.
Yeah, Simplified
And-
Essentials.
Yeah, Simplified Essentials, and that's the Instagram is Essentials by Lauren, and then that'll probably be ready to go in July.
Awesome. Well, let us know, and we'll make sure we market it a little bit on a couple
Oh,
of
yeah,
our
thank
shows.
you.
And anytime you guys want to come by, I know you're going to be leaving the area eventually, but anytime you're around the area, please reach out. We'd love to have you guys back on. It's been a real learning experience. I don't know about you, man, but I'm new.
Well, we'll probably bring some of the NWA guys by when we do 74, and then we can all have
75.
75.
Yeah, we're back here at the end of August.
Awesome.
Big shows in at the Chase. So
Awesome.
I hook you guys up. Yeah,
Hit us
for
up,
sure.
yeah. This
Yeah,
is great. Thanks for coming on, guys. We don't
Thank
want
you.
we
Appreciate
wanna
it.
keep you longer than you need to be here,
No,
so
you're
we'll
fine.
get you out of here.
Well, thank you so much. Then don't forget to like and subscribe, and we'll catch you next episode.
Yeah. You're safe.